All right, time flies. Boy, I'll tell you what, we are going to have some fun today. Thank you for joining us today. It's a special podcast of the Marshfield Old School Times. Normally we do this on Saturdays, but we have some very special guests in here with us today, and one of them has traveled several miles just to be on this show, I think.
That's you, George, all the way from
Yeah,
Springfield.
yeah, 25 miles.
Yeah. So we have with us today MHS alumni from 1966. I think that's 59 years if my math's correct.
Yeah.
George Latimer. George, welcome.
Thank you.
Roy Beck from Washington, D.C.
Greetings.
Roy. And we have on the phone with us today is Stan Hargus. And I believe he's in Seattle, Washington. Is that correct?
He believes
That's
that too.
right, right.
Yes.
Sitting here in Seattle watching the sunshine.
All right.
Overlooking the Puget Sound. And that is literally, not figuratively.
That's right.
This is going to be a fun day. This is going to be a fun day. And we really appreciate you guys coming in. Roy came in. I know he's got a little part or two in the Cherry Blossom Festival. And I think tomorrow's the alumni
Tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon.
Afternoon.
We have all the presidential descendants.
Yes.
Yeah, I think about 12 presidents.
Yeah, but is that when you do the emceeing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And then, of course, the alumni luncheon tomorrow, which I plan to attend, is, I think, around noon tomorrow. So, anyway, a big weekend in Marshfield. The gymnasium here, the old gym as we know it, the gym that was built in 1954, that is still being used every day, is absolutely full of people as we speak. There's hundreds of people over there getting their autographs on child celebrities or former childhood celebrities that are attending, and presidential descendants, and I think even Patrick Duffy, Bobby Ewing is over there. So it's a pretty big day here in Marshfield at the Marshfield Community Center. But let's move on with what we're here for. We want to talk to these three guys and kind of find out what they've been up to. 59 years is a long time, but yet, on the other hand, it really isn't. And
time flies.
It really does. And according to Roy's brother, Dennis, whose theme song we use every week, we appreciate, time flies. And that's exactly part of our theme. So what we do, guys, is all we're doing is documenting history for Marshfield and our community to make sure that future generations can hear some of the stories that we all have lived and that we all have heard and have been passed down to us. And that's what we're here for. So we open this up. It's a very informal time.
We all have heard, have been passed down to us. That's what.
Try that again, Stan.
I think
We open this up. It's a very informal.
he's feeding back.
Oh, was that me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Stan, is the technology too tough for you?
I'm bumfuzzled here. Hold on a second. I'm
Yeah.
gonna try and mute this guy.
Get your
All right.
speaker turned down. There you go. Okay. Super. Okay, great.
You know, old people in technology.
He's just an architect.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to start out. George, you and Roy will start with, and then Stan, you come in. Let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, when you came to America, and maybe your folks, family, so forth. George, start it off for us.
Well, my dad's family was around Webster County from the very beginning of white settlement and out at the St. Luke area. And my mother was from California, so she was an odd duck here coming to Webster County.
But she was a great Cub Scout den leader.
Oh my gosh,
Okay.
she
She
loved
brought in
children.
that California exotic kind of stuff.
What was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Peck.
Peck? Okay.
Yeah. And she wanted to have a whole bunch of kids. Unfortunately, I was it.
Oh, really?
So she mothered everybody else and loved to entertain.
Well, how could
kids.
anyone else ever top you? I mean, you know.
Well, that's what she thought.
Yeah.
I have no other choice anyway. So my dad was a builder. He partnered with Clyde McNabb, and they built a lot of interesting homes around
Built my home, 1950.
Marshfield. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. McDonald, Dr. Melton, Herman Pierce, big homes they built. They kind of got into concrete when I was in high school, which was a real convincing time for me to do something else beside working concrete the rest of my life.
That was hard work back then.
Hard work back then, yeah, for sure.
Mixed it by hand, probably with an electric mixer, and
yeah. We did have electric mixer.
Yeah.
So I went to Drury after high school, and ended up going to Texas Christian to seminary, and then served churches in North Missouri, in Aurora, in Shreveport, Louisiana, and back to Springfield, and then retired in 2010, and I've done 3 interims since then.
Yeah, you
Can't
didn't retire.
quit, and I've been at Marshfield just kind of filling in for 3 years, but now we have a woman in the church that's studying to be minister, and so we're the co-ministers.
There you
now.
go. You're going to teach her the way.
Well,
Is Texas Christian? Is it a Disciples of Christ
it
affiliate?
is.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
it
yeah.
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. Roy, how about you?
Well, the Becks came in down here. This is part of what gives you insight into how clueless some of the family has been. They came down here because my great grandmother Beck had tuberculosis, and they lived in Illinois, and they heard that the Ozarks was really a great place to
Healthy,
recover
yeah.
from
Yeah.
tuberculosis. I mean, it's not exactly dry.
Yeah,
weather
the
down there.
humidity's a little
Yeah.
strong, but
Well, although the chest hospital in Mount Vernon
Was-
was built in that location because it was on a windy hill,
Oh,
and they thought that the wind
Yeah.
would blow the bad
Well,
air away.
that wasn't the case in Bracken where they settled out of Black Oak and Bracken. But anyway, and she died. She lasted about 10 years, but they arrived with, I think they arrived with 2 kids. They ended up having 4, and that's all right there, where DD connects with the road to Niagara, out there by Bracken. My great grandparents didn't make a living on that farm and moved just as my grandfather Leslie was an adult, and they moved down to southwest Arkansas. I mean, practically to Shreveport.
Yeah.
And but 4 kids in my grandfather's family, and then he married a woman from Carthage who had been widowed by a mining accident. It was Niels Holmgren, who was a Norwegian immigrant, and he got married the first year, and the second year he died in a mining accident.
Wow.
But here long enough for my grandmother to be 11 days old. And so that's the thing that's always been fun about the family, is that in the end, my mother's grandmother married my dad's grandfather.
Really?
4 in one in the other, and then 7 new ones. So I guess got to tell you that my whole life, especially on the East Coast, once people find I'm from the Ozarks, you just got to play into it. So you don't wait for the jokes about, don't you come from the place where the family tree doesn't fork? No, I give those lines, and it's true. It's like, yeah, well, my mother is my own first cousin once removed. I have all these double half-second cousins.
I learned something major
So,
every week. This is a pretty major
Yeah.
learning.
Anyway, my mother and father were step first cousins.
Yeah,
as it turned out.
Yeah,
So
that's
anyway,
okay then.
that's the family history. But my grandfather, who was Uncle Perry Gorick in the Webster County newspaper for 40 years, writing a weekly column, he stayed here and had the 4 kids. My dad was number 3, and then dad. This is a great thing about the school, is what can happen in a place like that, because I think at that point, I'm not sure, I think the majority of students in high school were rural kids, and they were almost half when we were in school.
Sure, yeah.
And the VOAG teacher during Dad's senior year said, you ought to go to Cal College at Mizzou, and that's just unheard of.
Yeah,
in 1939
yeah.
to happen, but he went, and he worked his way through. The VOAG teacher found people in Columbia to give him jobs, a place for him to stay. So it was quite a deal. So he graduated from college, went through ROTC, was in World War II, ended up being stationed immediately after the bombs were dropped in Japan. Yeah. So that's the family here. Now I must say, Warren Beck was kind of a character. You know, when he turned old, once he retired at 65, he loved being old and a character. I've been aspiring to that my whole life, to be able to do that. But he
Roy,
loved it.
We can tell you something.
Oh,
You've made it.
okay.
Yeah,
all right,
arrived.
all right.
You've arrived.
But he said that, I can't remember who it was, but the man in town that was somebody that I knew, he was an old man when I was in high school, but I remember him saying that he heard that he told somebody else, said if Warren Beck can make it in college, anybody can. So Dad loved to tell that story. Anyway,
That's
so
great.
I went. So my grandfather, Uncle Perry Gorick, was a real inspiration to me with the writing, and I will say more about this and the effect of the teachers later. But I went to Mizzou journalism school, and I got drafted. Spent a couple of years in Yuma Proving Ground, Arizona, and believe it or not, in Italy.
Wow.
Went to work, of course, worked for a paper in Columbia, Missouri, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Cincinnati, Ohio, moved in Dallas. Those were all daily general circulation newspapers. In Dallas, I joined a national United Methodist weekly newspaper, about 500,000 circulation, and got to travel all over the world with that job and all over the country. And then went back with the Michigan newspapers in '87 to cover Congress for these Michigan papers. And then after a few years, started writing books and public policy, and started a nonprofit that deals with the same issues I've been dealing with, which labor force issues, immigration, environmental sustainability. These are all issues. And I retired 2 years ago, and then something happened. Last fall, I'm back working again full time. I'm as bad as George. But anyway, we must. I think.
But that is in your blood, because Warren never quit and sat down.
Well, yeah, he kept.
I mean, he literally started the recycling program in Webster County, and not just started the facility and the program, but he was out there picking up the paper along the side of the road.
Oh yeah,
pretty much any time.
Our whole life,
yeah.
We always tell the story that Dad was a good teetotaling Baptist, and but on the way to church, it was after the Saturday night, there would be beer and liquor containers on the side of Jackson Street, and he would stop and pick them up on the way. So our car would smell like we'd been out on a drunk all night by the time we got to Sunday school.
Real quickly, your mother. What was your mother's maiden name?
Her maiden name was Mosier.
Mosier.
Yeah,
okay.
she grew up in Texarkana.
Okay.
So I always tell people, I said, I grew up in the Ozarks, but at home it was a Southern home. Southern cooking.
Yes, yes.
It was black-eyed peas and all that kind of stuff.
And another, just really a community stalwart. I mean, she was another person that everyone looked up to that grew up in that era, and a fine lady. All right, Stan, it's your turn.
By the way, I thought George would have like some kind of photo. We could have because you're really good at that kind of thing, doing these
of Stan. Well, they can look at the intro.
Okay, but I would like to see him.
I mean, he is such a nice looking man. It's too bad.
We could look him up in your sophomore yearbook.
So one time we had a party over at it was a election night party over at your house.
Oh, that's right.
And the candidate that George did not support, when we first went to the bathroom, you opened the lid and he had a big old blown out picture of the candidate underneath the toilet seat.
Thanks for watching it for the post or whatever.
Okay, Stan, have
there.
Well, he's in.
Yeah, I'm here when Roy stops talking.
Let's see, where
All right.
where's Hargus?
Is that sophomore?
Yeah.
Oh, they're looking for you. But
That's looking guy on the page.
He must have been absent that day. I don't see him go from Hartwell.
oh,
You sure you got the sophomore? No, you got junior.
Okay.
Wait a minute, he's in the
I
wrong
forgot
class.
which class I'm in.
We got to make sure. We want to make sure everybody knows who you are here.
Yeah, I may be low class or high class. I don't know.
Because I'm sure you'll look exactly the same.
No,
right?
He's got a tie on.
Right here. Okay, let me have this.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put this right up here to the camera. This is kind of a hokey deal, but we're kind of hokey.
Technology.
Yeah, right here. See the tie and the sport coat there, right?
Oh,
Pretty much got it in the center, right there. What a fine-looking young man. Looky there.
We dressed up. I was
Yeah.
I had a tie on too.
See right there? Okay. There he is.
Corner, yeah.
Stanley Hargus. Okay. Now we're ready, Stan.
Okay, Stan.
All right, all right. Well, yeah, I come from people that have been in this county a long time, from the Harguses and the Gays and the Childresses and the Julians, all around 1850. Matter of fact, my great-great-grandfather, Robert Lucas Childress, was the first school commissioner of Webster County.
Really? Okay.
And they sent him out to collect taxes, which it didn't make him popular.
Yeah. Now that was that an elected position then? I know the
I think it was.
the county superintendent became elected for till what? The 40s or with the new constitution or something?
I don't know. I just know that family
Yeah.
history. Also, he was in the Constitutional Convention for Missouri.
Okay. That was 45.
At any rate, so yeah, long time
Well, that would have been an earlier one.
resident of Webster County, born in Springfield, brought back home here. And the story is my dad took Dog Edwards' ambulance up to the hospital in Springfield and drove Mama back with me in the ambulance because he used to drive the ambulance for the funeral home from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was running the cafe. Mom and Dad ran the Marshfield Cafe, until 1958 on the square.
Where was that one on the square?
Yeah. So it was great growing up around the square.
Which way was? Hey, Stan, wasn't? Isn't that where the
flower shop?
where the feelings was feelings there when the
Next to Feelings. It's where the Style Shop.
Style
went in
shop.
after,
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Style Shop moved in there after us.
Okay.
Yeah. On the what's that? South Side Square. I'm sorry, East Side.
East side,
Yeah. At any rate, growing up around the square, I had an older brother and sister that worked in the restaurant. Clyde was class of 55, and Julian Zip was class of 57. And then there was an 8-year gap. And then I came along, and then my younger sister, Becky, who I'm sure, Lyndall, you probably know.
Yeah, I remember Becky. Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I graduated in 77, but yeah.
Yeah, 4 of us. Yeah, she was 69, so it's still a bit old.
Right.
At any rate, went to college, University of Arkansas. Got into a real competitive school of architecture there, 50 freshman year. And about a year later, met my first wife. And about a year after that, we got married. And a couple of years after that, we had my daughter. So I was working my way through college with married and a child. And I finally gave that up. Worked for a couple of years in Arkansas, a couple of years in Texas. And then, I had to make some money. Anyway, went back to college at the University of Houston and got my architecture degree.
Okay.
And worked there for 30 years. During the time, marriage status changed. I was single for a while. And I met Linda Fields Grant, who we've been married almost 30 years now.
Wow.
So with that, my one child became 4 with Linda's 3 coming in.
Okay.
We had a pretty good family.
Yeah.
But anyway, about 2002, Linda was really tired of being hot in Houston, and we moved to Seattle. Sold our house, came out here without jobs. I thought probably the most adventurous thing I've done.
That's a big change. It's a big move, isn't it? Yeah.
Big change. Yeah.
So did your kids come with you, or did they stay in the Houston area?
Well, they're scattered.
Scattered,
my daughter is in New York City. She's an interior designer. With there as an actress. My older stepson is in Charleston, South Carolina. Ran a successful Mexican restaurant there for a number of years. COVID finally kind of did it in.
Yeah.
The other 2 of Linda's kids, Aaron and Carol, live near Kerrville, Texas.
Right.
So nobody's out here with us, but we go see them.
Sure. Are you are you of the same Hargus family as the Niangua Harguses? I mean, Ernest Hargus or Jack Hargus that we knew here in town, and Sonny and some of those.
Yeah, cousins.
Yeah, cousins. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
Barbara was with Marshfield Mouse. She was married to Jack, I think, right?
No. Matter of fact, Barbara just passed away. Barbara Hargus.
I saw that.
Yeah, just recently. No, Jack worked for Mac Case for years, and
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
forget
not
I
gonna
forget
be
what
that.
Barbara's husband's name is.
He worked at the steel plant.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but he's still around.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Anyway,
so-
he's one of Dad's cousins.
yes, sure. And your mother's maiden name? Was-
Childress.
Yeah, Childress. You told me that. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Gotcha.
they were from around Diggins.
Yeah, that's all the same family as Judge Childress's family and all that, right?
Yeah,
Back there.
Judge Childress is my uncle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Or was. Yeah.
Well, you three guys, tell us, any of you, just take turns. I'm not going to dictate who talks when, but let's talk about getting to know each other. I know church, school. How did you all get acquainted? Obviously, you went 12 years of high school or school together, but let's just start with that.
Well, George just said that he never knew a world without Stan Hargus.
Yeah, we were in church together as babies, and then we were all in the same first grade class.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only one.
No, there was two classes.
Was there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
we were
was
kind of the first bigger baby boom.
Yeah, we
Yes.
were the first class after they remodeled the school and built a new
the
gym.
new gym. So
Yeah.
they moved elementary from the second story down to the first floor.
Right.
And I do know that, and that's where elementary was from 55 until 60 when they built the Hubble building. So you guys spent your whole elementary time downstairs, and
The last
you were
last
the last
class to do it.
Yes.
All 12 years.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could remember not knowing you guys, but I can't.
Well, there's still hope.
I can't remember the time, and I can't really picture it. But we were all in Cub Scouts together. I know
Yeah.
we knew, which
Yeah.
Stan was with us.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we were in the
We were all
same
in Cub Scouts
Yeah,
together.
Cub
yeah.
Scout thing.
And that's, of course, my mom was a den leader,
Mhm.
and George's mom
Mhm.
was, and so that
Yeah,
put us
mine too.
Yeah.
together a lot.
Did you live here in town or outside of town, Stan, as a kid?
We lived 2 blocks from the square,
2 blocks from the square.
Mm.
Okay.
down on White Oak Street, South White Oak.
Yeah.
Yeah, between Jackson and Washington.
Okay.
We were, George was all the way on the east side of town.
Yeah.
I was on the west city limits,
Yeah.
right
Must
there
have
next
been
to.
a whole mile apart.
Yeah.
Where was your,
You know,
where
it's
was
almost-
your home place?
On Burford
Almost
and
2
Holland
miles.
Street.
Burford, Nollet. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're next to where that old farmhouse used to
Yeah.
sit.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Judy Miner's son. He was asked. I was having a conversation. He asked, "Did you know my mom? Were you and my mom in class together?" I said, "Oh yeah, Judy was my first girlfriend from 2nd grade through 6th grade." I said, "The problem was I never made a move, so she never knew it. So it was like, but
We all had those girlfriends, didn't we? Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but we had, so it was the case that we kind of had a very kind of new classrooms really when we
Yeah.
started elementary, and
Yeah.
then just as we moved into junior high, elementary moved out, which gave us
More space.
more
yeah.
space.
That's
and
true. Yeah.
so these classrooms over on this end were multi-purpose for us. We were both in grade school and this is the interesting thing is that you know how it is that the quiet ones, like mass murders, all that kind of stuff. The quiet ones you're always worried about. I mean, the ones that and George had the most mischievous mind around. He was always there. But he didn't really look like he was.
He was disciplined.
Yeah, he was disciplined.
Looked innocent.
Yeah, I stand. But I caught a lot of flack.
He did.
And so I had a 3rd grade, bad 3rd grade. I can hardly walk by that room, where I was. And then the 6th grade, I was out in the hallway about as much as, I thought at first this was going to be in the principal's office, and I thought that would be triggering.
Yeah.
I spent so much time in the principal's office.
No, we like to call this, the famous George Ballard counseling office, because those of us that had George Ballard for a counselor, I know some of you had him for a coach or principal even for a while, but George was kind of everybody's friend. He could talk to the young girls. He could talk to the guys that needed discipline. It didn't matter. He was just that kind of a guy. As a counselor, he was extremely well liked by the students. Now, I don't know what the administration or the teachers thought of him, but this was his office. So when you guys were going in this building, you mentioned before our meet, you talked about Mrs. Patterson was your third grade teacher.
Miss Patterson.
Miss Patterson, sorry.
Not,
Okay.
Well, if I'd had her, I would have done
But
fine.
Stan, do you remember some of your maybe elementary teachers that you had just along the way?
Sure. Miss Rutledge, Miss Carpenter,
Oh, second grade, right?
Miss Patterson. Yes, and I think we had pretty much the same ones after that.
Mm-hmm.
We had. So were you? So were you guys in Miss Compton's class?
Yeah, we were Compton.
I had her.
Yeah, Miss Compton. We had to. I was telling people about the hands on the wall. They were, of course, this is. We were a very racially homogeneous group.
Sure.
So you had pink hands and dark hands, and each day you came in, she'd inspect your hands, and if they were dirty, fingernails dirty.
Yeah.
So teaching hygiene.
Yeah.
It was important stuff.
He was.
But I'd come back as an adult for years until she died.
Yeah.
And she'd immediately say, "Are your shoes tied?" And that was because we had a tornado drill or something, right?
Uh-huh.
And was it you, George, or was it Mark Birchfield? Somebody had was sitting in front of me, had untied my shoelaces, and then tied them to the legs of the desk.
I can't take credit for that.
Okay.
It sounds like a great idea.
And the fire drill went off, and I started leaving and dragging the desk and whole thing. And so her whole life, that was you get caricatured and stereotyped, and that was me.
Yeah.
The boy that was tied to the desk.
Yeah.
I have this theory about Roy because most of us really look to him as a leader. And I felt like the faculty knew that, and that they thought if we could control Roy, we can control the rest of
The class. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But I remember one thing Roy said. It was probably about fourth grade. You said, "I want to say that Ricky Stockton is an outstanding student. He's always outstanding in the hall." And he immediately got sent to the principal for saying that.
He stood up in class and said that, or something, or just.
Yeah. I probably talked a little bit too much. That's all we can say. I was a good kid, a good kidder. Anyway, yeah, we had when in sixth grade we had elections, and the class clown does tend to get that's how I got elected.
You got elected
president of the class, class clown, and
you were student body president later on, then, right?
Yeah, they couldn't get out of the habit, but it's what counts as leadership in grade schools. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it doesn't so help.
I think one thing that Roy and Stan and I have stayed real good friends is humor.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can see that.
We enjoy having a good, and I've gotten together as married couples. In fact, even our wives organized a cruise that we did a few years ago.
That's
cool. Very lucky.
That's really neat.
Yeah, that's true. We've always lived way apart.
Yeah.
Right now, Washington
It's kind of remarkable, actually.
Yeah.
It really is.
But
the friendship and how you've kept
both have visited homes and all. So that's been great. George has been for our class. I think around the time our class was starting to retire, like early '60s and all. It was when everybody kind of really got on the email, and George really kind of oversaw that, and that I know George's going to talk about our scholarship program, but it's every class needs somebody that just kind of steps in, and he's
that everybody likes, and that everybody will respond to.
Well, I've just kind of organized it, but Ben Dugan really did some great things because he would write these long, hilarious emails about stuff and got people reading and commenting on and thinking about.
Well, you all, and I mentioned this in the invitation on Facebook. You all were extremely instrumental in our 100th celebration of the old building. And George, you specifically was a contact person for me from your class, but you guys put a lot of time and effort into that.
Well, they designed
and that was a really neat event.
They designed the time capsule.
They sure did.
Was it you and who?
Pretty much me.
Okay.
No, it was a great time, and I appreciated that, and that was a great thing for us to come together. It kind of even helped Reunion Fest solidify and bring all classes sorted together in
It was nice.
in a union.
Well, school spirit, you know, it's like there's a
Yeah.
lot of things you got to do to keep people's spirits up. And George and Stan really helped me with the old milk truck. You know, my dad, he had retired his door-to-door milk truck.
Mhm.
And so when I turned 16, that was the vehicle, that was my vehicle as a teenager, that the open doors and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
painted flat black.
yeah, well, Dad said I could not drive it around with the Beck's
sticker.
Milky Way Dairy. That would be bad advertising. So we painted it flat black, and we could scrawl slogans and stuff.
That's
And
good.
but it was missing a couple of things. Well, it was missing side doors. It was also missing a window, which was blown out during a Halloween hedge apple battle of trucks. But the windshield wipers worked, so we had a don't do a smoking sign on that. But George and Stan hooked up horns in the truck to do the State Farm insurance thing. So every time you honked, it was da 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 da. So it was kind of a
That
happy.
is neat.
sort of a
Whatever
happy
happened to
days.
the old van? Any idea?
Well, yeah, it was parked out at my Uncle Donald's out there at Black
Uh-huh.
Oak in the field for a long time. And then he used it to store some hay and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And then we were going to, for one of our, like, I don't know, 40th
Mhm.
anniversary, he had the idea, let's put it up on top of a flatbed.
Yeah.
And we went out there, and he had just that year sold it for scrap metal. We just lost it. So
That'd been neat. Yeah. I certainly remember that as well.
yeah, that was. We would put this. None of this is legal today. There's a lot of things we did
Yeah.
that weren't illegal,
Right.
but are illegal today.
Absolutely.
And one of the things we did was we'd drive to Springfield, just on Glenstone, to do Chinese fire drills. Remember that was the thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right, and you stop
Make
the
sure you're-
stoplight, you open all the doors, everybody runs around, changes places. But with the truck, we could put about 12, 15 people in the back of the truck, and then it was. Everybody
Did you take it to a drive-in movie theater by chance?
Well, I don't think we ever
Don't
did that,
remember that.
but that was fun.
Yeah.
One thing I'm trying to, you guys remember this, but Mr. Barrett was the biology teacher,
Mhm.
and one day we were, I think maybe it was after football practice. George and I were in football, and probably junior year, and we were walking down, and we saw Mr. Barrett, and he was older at that
Mhm.
time. He seemed like really old,
Yeah.
but younger
I remember
than us
Probably
now.
50. Yeah.
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 And he was carrying like a 5-gallon can, and Mr. Barrett, what are you carrying? And he says, well, these are out of date frogs. They were expired frogs.
For dissecting.
But I mean, most of the frogs we dissected had been expired, but they were expired to date. I guess it got kind of a little mushy and all. So he's taking them through them. I says, well, could we have them? When I tell this story, everybody goes, what teacher would do this? But he gave us the 5-gallon
did.
can. So we put that in the back of the milk truck. And then, so we became the frog man because Batman was,
Yeah,
That's
Batman
right.
was
Right?
big. Yeah.
that was on TV at the
I
time.
had
Yeah.
little to do with this. So.
But Stan, you were, I mean, I know you were very involved.
Yeah, I was
And
there.
how did the frogs get used, Roy?
Well, we didn't have a lot of dates, the three of us. So
I
on
can see
Friday-
why. I can
So
actually
on
see why.
Friday and Saturday nights,
Frogs.
when other guys were having dates, we just could drive around. So we would just drive out on the country roads, and it was especially nice when it was warmer weather, windows are down, and we drive by and toss a frog into the front seat, one at a time, just a friendly.
And you probably might have known some of those people that you threw this frog in.
We did, and I think it probably affected our ability to get dates in the next year too. It was.
That's great. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I think there may have been a frog under a windshield wiper on John Bruce's car.
John, or you mean Don,
Don Bruce, the
the night
marshal?
watchman. Yes, I think we might have done that.
John was in your class, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, John is our class.
I mean, I'm sorry, his dad. His dad's
Yeah.
car.
Yeah,
his
yeah,
dad,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
So, we've talked a lot. You know, everybody in our class has done a lot of talking,
Mhm.
writing back and forth about teachers, and you know, I think for myself, since I didn't become a teacher, a lot of our class became teachers, so they have a lot of ideas about teaching. You know, and you can't say how how do you compare your teachers? What I know is that certain teachers just, the older I have gotten, the more they mean to you.
Exactly.
I mean,
sure. Absolutely.
I mean, what's your sense, George? On
Yeah, I think you see in perspective some things that you can't see at the time,
Yeah.
and all. And we had an English teacher, Mrs. Ragland,
oh yeah, she
and
came
she was
late.
just
Yeah.
she was just 2 or 3 years older than us because she had gone through SMS in 3 years, and she was young anyway. So we were quite taken with her, and her husband is also on staff here, and she kind of tried to help us experience a little bit of college in
Yeah.
junior and senior English, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful for her for that.
Mm.
But we were also
Yeah.
talking about Olive Robertson, who was quite a stalwart at this school for
Yes.
years.
She would have been way up there in age by that time.
Oh yeah, and it was. Well, what I know she taught Latin, but the main thing that influenced was the
Social
studies.
Yeah.
And she was. I thought about it because I went into journalism in the University of Missouri School of Journalism style of trying to be balanced, stay open to all points of view, and all that kind of thing. And I just remember one time in class, there's some answers to questions and stuff, and I must have answered a question about history or something that was seemed like I was relating it to the current political situation.
Yeah.
And she said, and this is her style, wasn't it? She stopped and she goes, "Roy Howard, your politics are showing."
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
And I was always, I thought, it's like, what? That really, because I was
That
embarrassed.
stuck with you, didn't
she
it?
embarrassed me, for
Yeah.
one, but it's like,
Stuck with you.
okay, this is okay. There's a difference between, it's okay to have opinions, but there's
Yeah.
such a thing as
Yeah.
scholarship, and that was a lot about being a citizen. Another person's Mrs. Morrison,
Mhm.
and it wasn't the teaching, although we had her as teacher, but as a librarian.
Yep.
Did you? I don't know if you
She
guys,
was still librarian.
I just
when
had her
was
for
at school.
freshman
Yeah.
English.
but just librarian. She would take me into the stacks and suggest that I needed to read a
Yeah.
particular book. I think that was her way of trying to tame me.
Yeah.
That along the way.
She
But
probably saw potential in you.
she
too.
just saw, she knew that I needed some guidance.
Well-
But by the time I got to college, a lot of the required reading in college, I'd read those
Yeah,
novels.
She had you on the right.
Yeah, and it's
That's neat.
and those were some pretty deep type of books. Somerset Maugham and those kind of things, Camus and all those. So but I didn't really. I did appreciate the books, but I didn't. It was many years later. I thought that wasn't just. That was special.
Yeah, there was more to it than what you really realized at the time. Did you have Mr. Morrison too? Her husband, was he a teacher?
We had him for junior
history,
high,
junior high history,
history, social
and,
studies.
and kind of along those same lines, both Mr. Morrison, and Mrs. Morrison, a lot of kids weren't real nice to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it wasn't to their face, but even behind their back.
Well, they were a little bit. They had
were
a little different kind of personality.
They lived in Springfield.
Yes.
But, they also were dedicated people.
Yeah,
dedicated
they didn't
teachers.
have children.
Just
right?
like what Ms. Morrison did for you. She probably did, something for you that ended up being a big part of what your career would be that, you had no idea at the time.
Yeah.
And other teachers that you may have really liked maybe didn't contribute to that like she did.
True.
So
well,
there's a lot. We all could say those stories, and we can all think of those teachers like that.
I want to mention Fern Thomas.
Yes.
Junior high English.
Yep.
And
Eighth
she
grade
had
for
a
me.
magic about her that there was no foolishness in her class.
Mhm.
And everybody knew it. And kids who were problems, attention or whatever in other classes didn't give her any problems at all.
No.
And so,
She was
able to-
intense.
yeah.
She was intense. She'd use her hands, and she would, onomatopoeia, and she would, you could just almost. I can still
Diagramming
remember
sentences.
that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably diagram a sentence or two
Yeah.
this afternoon.
I loved that. That was. You must have loved that. Standards almost like a form of architecture, designing.
Well, I probably didn't appreciate it at the time.
Yeah, Audie Dehart was another really great teacher, math
Oh,
teacher.
yeah.
I know he didn't teach math too long, then he got into administration, but he was super.
He was a good he was a good teacher for sure. One thing I want to touch upon with you guys, and just because of the era that you grew up in, as children in the 50s after the war, pretty good times. I'm sure, like you've talked about, a good childhood, just as I had. But then things started changing in the mid 60s, and to be able to, I can't imagine what it would have been like as a family, as your mothers may have been fearful of what may have happened with you all after graduation, as you turned 18, as you entered the world that was in kind of turmoil there with a lot of things going on. Times were changing, as Bob Dylan would say. What was that like? Do you recall?
Yeah. So Stan, do you remember? I think. Do you remember us talking much in senior year about the possibility of getting drafted? I don't. I don't remember it.
Well, we knew we were going to college.
Yeah.
Student deferments are still a thing.
Yeah.
I guess we thought it was a ways off, and of course, the war hadn't heated up
were
in '66, but it was there and hanging around. And,
yeah,
it's. But when we had our 50th reunion, that's when George, and this is another one. George did a great job of tracking down all of the vets, and with some others.
Yeah.
All the vets in the class, our class, and it
you had a bunch of your
it was something like 53%
yes.
of the men are veterans,
and one woman,
but Linda Weston, but 53% of the men. And I went on to research on that. Now it's something at the time. It was something like 11% of the nation's men are veterans, and 53% of our class. And we put out a little bit of a challenge in the Marshfield Mail saying that says we think that after World War II that we are the highest percentage. Nobody's challenged that.
Yeah.
And I mean it was just extraordinary how within the next few years, just how many people got swooped up, and some of us were fortunate enough to go to college, but then a lot of us got drafted right out of college, and then others. Went right in, especially in the worst part, '68. The worst thing. Gary Yates was an incredible combat and really heroic. He turned down a medal, but he was just great heroism.
Yeah.
But John Hanson was killed there.
John
was the only one, despite the fact we had a lot in Vietnam.
Yeah.
John was killed, but the school lost a lot of classmates.
We did a little in our Reunion Fest brochure back a few years ago. We actually honored that group of Marshfield High School graduates that killed in Vietnam. There was, I can't remember. I should, but it was a dozen or 15.
Yeah.
And now in the Webster County, it would have been about double that. I mean, if you took the rest of the county, the Seymour School and Rogersville and so forth. But it was it just had to be a very tough time for the families to know. And maybe the next year or two would have been a little bit worse. But
Stan, George, I said, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking our college years, 66 through 70, they were tense.
Yeah.
I feel like we sort of, for the most part, we kind of grew up in an amazingly golden era.
Yeah.
I just don't remember being much, concerned. It's like not filled with a lot of angst in high school. Had time to do pranks instead of
pranks instead of angst.
Yeah.
Well, I think we would all agree that 68 is when things started changing.
Yeah,
big time.
Really changed around this area.
Yeah.
Now we had the early years, but before we started school, just for the big polio thing. But it's like that was kind of resolved almost before we could worry much about it.
Sure, yeah. They lined us up in the cafeteria.
Here.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, what would you have been?
Was
second
grade? Second grade,
yeah.
I think. Yeah. And the doctor had this huge syringe, like you vaccinate a horse with.
Yeah.
Of some kind of pink liquid, and they would shoot a kid, and then they change the needle and shoot another kid
out of the same syringe.
Out of the same syringe. Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it was. I just remember that was full of angst.
I bet it was.
Getting those shots.
Yeah. But we were so worried about polio that it was such a relief to have a vaccine.
Yeah. I can't imagine that.
And we had we all experienced the hiding under our desk in case of a nuclear
Mhm.
Yeah.
attack.
Yeah, that'll do it. Make sure you're tucked under the desk, Bill.
Yeah. Isn't that something? It's crazy.
Yeah.
The fallout shelters around town, the basement of the courthouse,
Yeah.
like that was gonna.
Yeah, the crackers still over there.
The what?
The crackers.
The crackers?
Yeah,
I don't know.
They had food supplies
Soda crackers?
in great big cans of water and crackers.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I learned something else
Yeah,
today. This is
that was
amazing.
there for a long time.
Yeah. What, Stan, do you have any other high school memories that you want to throw in before we move on to the next chapter here? Anything comes to mind?
Oh my. Well, we had a lot of adventures. We had a lot of fun, and like you both are saying, or you all are saying, it was a great time. To grow up. I just remember some of our adventures. Mr. Good's wedding, Bernard.
Well, yeah, he was of course the yearbook and paper editor. What other class did he have? Was he just? I guess.
I didn't have him as
Was he
teacher.
business? I
Yeah.
don't know. I didn't have him.
Anyway, he got married during our senior year
Okay.
when we still had the Frogmobile.
Okay.
Go ahead, Stan. You tell the story.
Well, anyway, we decided we managed to find out where the wedding was going to be. He wouldn't tell us. And
In Springfield.
yeah, we went up to Springfield. We found the church. We found a Mustang sitting out there that looked like it was going to be the bridal and groom vehicle. We decorated up with cans. We put syrup on the handles. We put frogs under the windshield wipers. Roy Howard had circled by and let some of us out, and we were hiding in the shrubbery watching. Well, the bride's brother, who was a Marine home on leave, followed that car.
Oh, no.
We found the Drazen, holy heck. We had to make a fast retreat out of that. Yeah, a low car. That's one good.
That must have been around 65 or so, right? Or
But it was 60. It was spring of '66.
So
Yeah.
those Mustangs were pretty hot back
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
They right off the
Yeah.
factory,
Yeah.
weren't they?
Yeah.
I don't
I got to drive the first Mustang in Marshfield, Missouri.
Really?
Really?
I worked for Stanley's Pharmacy,
Yeah.
Oh.
and Stanley bought a 64 and a half
Yeah.
Mustang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little three on the floor, white, and it was a delivery car. And he got on to me for taking too long to make deliveries because you got to drive around square.
I thought I bought a fast car.
That's neat.
Stan has always been both these guys a cartoonist. They're always that's their
That's their thing.
that's their subversion
Yeah.
is making fun of everybody. Drawing the pictures and all that kind of stuff.
Character.
Yes,
Character.
but so during the football season, because you don't have that many games, there was a company that made these silk ribbons, and so you do it. You get a ribbon was like beat the Pirates or beat the
Yes,
Yellow
I remember
Jackets,
that.
right?
Yeah, we had those.
And so Stan would always do a cartoon and draw it up. I mean, that's amazing how that we were able to get that turned around
Mhm.
every week.
Yeah.
Very good. But
Wow.
he was the caricaturist laureate of Marshfield High School.
Future architect. Stan had a car. His family car was a Rambler, and it had one really interesting feature. The front seat, which was a bench seat, would lay down. And so, one of the things that Stan and I would like to do occasionally is that he would lay that seat down, and he would drive with his feet, and I would work the accelerator. And it looked kind of like a monkey was driving the car if you went.
And
Did that pick up chicks? Did you be able to get
They
chicks?
would just flock to you. Yeah, right.
I'm not actually sure whether that was legal even then. But
Stan, you had a comment on that?
Well, like I say, we did not date a lot. It was an opportunity missed, I would say.
Yeah, that's what it is for sure. So you guys, as you began your careers, what do you think, led you down the paths that you went? And then what like Roy, you've got like you said, unbelievable career with what you've done and kind of veered off and done your own thing. And I mean, I don't know who your mentor was or how you got started, but whatever got you into that, after your journalism career, into what you do with your business and so forth?
well, I mean, I will say that it's interesting, Mrs. Thomas, because although my grandfather was gone by that point.
Yeah.
But she had a thing where she had us. We had to write a 20-page story. Remember that? Do you remember that?
Oh, I probably had to put it.
Or maybe it's a
online.
10-page story.
10
No,
page,
it was a 10-page story, and I think I wrote a 40-page story. That was the deal. And every editor I've ever had said that,
Yeah.
you know, I had no had a
no-
problem,
no
a
way to
discipline
stop.
problem. But anyway, it was to write fiction.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I got to writing. It's like in 7th grade. It's like, oh, I love this.
It was your thing. Yeah.
Like, you
You're
know,
an artist. You're an artist.
when you just love doing something.
Uh-huh.
I think a little bit like Stan in the what do you call it? What's the name of that Turkey Hall? What was the
Oh,
class?
the drafting class?
Yeah, the drafting class.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Stan. Yeah, and anyway, that was and she gave me a lot of encouragement.
Yeah.
People all over town would mention my grandfather too.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then my dad, who worked 6 days a week, long hours and everything. But one thing he'd do in the evening is he'd sit down and he would read the paper, the Springfield paper. He paid attention to bylines.
Mm-hmm.
He would, such and such writer, this and that. I mean, for me, what I've learned is a very typical first son of a World War II veteran.
Yeah.
In the sense that, I mean, he had me going to American Legion with him, and there's just all this stuff that he really kind of pushed me through, all this civic stuff, playing taps at the American Legion funerals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think I really wanted to please my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was easy because it was like what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was it. And so I went to Mizzou, and all of that was interesting because in that I did a half a career in the newspapers, and then that opened up all kinds of other things.
Sure.
And that led to, actually, in Mrs. Thomas's class, I decided I wanted to be an author.
Hmm.
And then I soon learned that it would really be helpful if you knew something, if you had experienced something
You studied.
to be
what
an
you-
author.
Yeah.
Well, not just study. You got to live something to be an
Mhm.
author. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't write fiction; it was nonfiction. But so I've written 6 books, and it's not been my main thing, but it's been a great joy
Yeah.
to do that, and Mrs. Robertson would have been, I think, okay with me eventually getting into these policies and having an opinion and all of that. So one thing leads to another. It's stepping stones. Very few people have overnight
Right.
things, and I did feel like sometimes when I was sitting out in the hall, and I sat in the hall a lot in 3rd grade, 6th grade, 8th grade science. I sat in the hall in 8th grade science a lot.
I was out there with you a time or two.
There you go. And then I got to wear a dunce hat at the front of the class in freshman math class.
Oh my.
So, and I got the full scale paddling. That was okay in those days.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was legal in those days.
Yeah.
But I must say that you do develop a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Like I'm going to show them someday. So I had a little bit of that was going on.
Yeah.
Kind of that
Sure.
put some ambition behind you.
Right.
But I loved Marshfield. I never thought at any moment growing up I would want to be anywhere else in the world. I just thought we were in the greatest place.
Mhm.
And with the newspaper business the way it was, I ended up living in big cities forever. But
But you still have that connection in those
Yeah,
roots.
and you come back a lot.
No, I
and
do.
you
I
stay
come back a
connected,
lot.
and with the internet and with everything, social media, you're able to continue to
And
stay on top of it.
it's I will say this, that being in the kind of stuff I do with the books and the public policy, so I've done quite a lot of national media,
Right.
all the stuff, and a lot of it's pretty critical. It's controversial, and but almost always the criticals will call me folksy.
Yeah.
That's the word. But it's like, but that's kind of their word. It's like he doesn't seem like a mean person. He's
Kind of a Will Rogers
he's
folksy.
folksy.
Yeah.
He's a folksy demonic guy.
Yeah.
But no, but
We
but-
think that's a compliment.
I said folksy, and some of my colleagues go, "Wow, how dare them?" I go, "No, they know me."
Yeah. But that's that's really a character trait, though, that is a good thing. It's a positive thing, because even if you aren't speaking what they want to hear, they still kind of forgive you a little because of that. You know,
Yeah.
you're not a mean person, and they could see that. Stan, how about you? What led you to want to have a career in architecture? And was it a teacher? Was it your family? Was it something that clicked when you were as early as you can remember, or what?
Well, I was kind of aimless about what I wanted to do. I liked to draw. I was good at math. My older sister was married to an engineer, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool what he does, a mechanical engineer. I also had in my head I wanted to be a psychologist. And John Latimer told me, he said, well, most psychologists end up being their own patients. And he introduced me to an architect in Springfield that he had used for his house, and talked to me about that. And it just kind of dawned on me that architecture uses elements of the people skills of psychology and the engineering skills of engineering. It was kind of a marriage that made sense. And it was in my senior year when I really kind of figured that out. I never, other than the one man John Hosmer introduced me to, I had never met an architect until I went to college.
Yeah.
So it's been a great career. I loved every bit of it. It's hard. You struggle at first. It took a long time to get out of college, as I pointed out. But I love the career. I've gotten to design some things that I'm really proud of. I've made clients solve their problems, made them happy. It's very satisfying.
Was it mainly commercial buildings or residential, or what mainly?
You name it. Over the years, everything from small residential when I worked for myself to a $78 million high school renovation.
Wow.
Yeah, don't be too modest there. You really made your name on school architecture.
Yeah, I did a lot of schools and medical and commercial. It was fun. I actually designed a building that blew up one time. It was
Well, congratulations.
yeah, it was at the Phillips 66 refinery outside of Houston,
Oh
Texas.
wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they had a fire and a unit called K-resin in it.
Yeah. The one thing that I've noticed.
Not many architects can say that.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed, the cookie cutter approach today seems to be more prevalent. I mean, if you look back in the day, 50 years ago, 60, 70, whatever, people sort of, like you said, they sort of wanted an architect to build what they wanted, but now it's more like, okay, the architect comes in, here's a cookie cutter plan, you give me a piece of ground that this will fit on. And it seems like that's been the way with some projects that I've been around a little bit. And I know when they built the Webster County Jail, the first Webster County Jail plan was going to go out here on 10 acres at the edge of town on a nice flat piece of ground. And that's not what people wanted. They wanted to see the jail stay downtown. It had to fit the ground, and that's what we got. But is that something that's, I'm sure because of money, the cookie cutter way is prevalent in some areas? Yeah.
The cost of construction, it has generated a whole lot of very simple box-like structures for residences. Here in Seattle, we're getting condos, canyons down the street of condos.
Yeah.
But and again, the siding, there may be a party panel or something like that. You don't see the kind of brick structures and things that you used to see, or more. And the idea of strong civic architecture has kind of gone away, but it's an economic reality.
Right.
The other thing is, the developers tend to just reuse plans over and over, change color,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
Not everybody needs to have an architect, but everybody needs to have a decent house.
Yeah, that's right.
However it comes about.
Yeah, George, how about you? What did you have a calling early in life, or?
Not really. I did appreciate very much Marshfield Christian Church growing up. We had some fine ministers in those years, and it was a pleasant experience for me. I found myself being in leadership a lot in the worship, but they had high school kids were always a part of the worship, and if anybody wasn't going to be there the next day, they'd call me.
Yeah.
And I'd fill in. So I was doing it about half the time, and that felt good. And I went to college. I was going to be in engineering, and kind of fooled around, didn't take classes very seriously for a year or two, and then I found myself with fewer options. And also, it was 1968. My father had died after a year of cancer, and what I wanted to do with my life was to do something that made a difference to people. And I felt like, you know, a good pastor can do that in a lot of lives, and I was willing to do what it took to get there. And so I had some great faculty members at Drury that helped me kind of get focused, and then in seminary. When I went, it wasn't the most academic seminary, but it was a seminary full of pastors. Even, you know, these guys had PhDs, but they were out preaching in some little Texas church on the weekend, you know, and I was very grateful for the time I was at Bright Seminary.
Don't you think, as a pastor, though, you did have a calling? I mean, you probably felt an obligation to the big guy upstairs, like, you know, he's kind of wanting you to do this, right?
Well, I feel like it's something I can do reasonably well.
Sure.
And there's such a need for people that can do it reasonably well. That that's why I keep doing it. You know, it's like I may be fooling myself, but I think I'm doing some things as well as I ever did.
That's great.
Even though I'm getting up to close.
You're
to
right.
age.
We
you pastor some pretty diverse churches. I mean, you did the downtown Springfield.
The rural churches, and being in Louisiana, that was an experience by itself. I was looked upon as a Yankee down there. You know, I didn't hardly think I was a Yankee.
And the way we worship is so much different than it was when we were kids.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And
you know,
I'm sure
it was pretty much mainline and Catholic when we were growing up,
right.
and now it's kind of.
It's more entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial.
Evangelical or something.
Yeah, it will evangelical.
Yeah.
But, you know, churches pop up and become extremely successful.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of, well, often it's a personality of someone that draws people.
Exactly.
And all that. So.
It's interesting. Couple things we've kind of hit our 5 o'clock hour, and Roy's got another event to attend, but I do a couple things that kind of on my mind as we've sat here, and I thought about it before. So the first thing is your class of 66, and as I look through the retrospect, I know a lot of those people. A lot of them still live around here. Many don't live here, but I still know them. I knew them growing up, knew their brothers, sisters, parents, whatever. Your class, and I don't know that we have this today, and I'm not so sure, maybe the classes ahead of you did, you just seem to have a real common bond, a connection to want to be around each other, to stay in communication. When you did your 50th, it was a great success. I mean, you had a lot of your classmates, and obviously you guys are especially close, but many others were in your class. What do you think that attraction has been to keep that closeness?
It's been an interesting thing for me. I'm not having brothers and sisters, and I discovered a number of years ago, we used to live down on Grand Lake in Oklahoma, and we'd have the class members come down a couple of times. You know, there'd be a house full of people, and more than we could really sleep and all that. And some of those people, you know, I didn't know that well growing up, and I haven't been around them much for years, but I found out there was a total bond there of camaraderie. I think we kind of grew up in the same time, having some of the same experiences, and there was just something that bound us together that was just inexplicable.
The power of culture, isn't it? It's like, before anything, we live, anybody around the country that lived through the same time, there's a connection there, and then the geography, you know, place, and just knowing the same things, and even if you weren't in the same class or you weren't in the same neighborhood, there's just so many things that you've got in common, and there's just something about growing old, and there's people who you can talk to about things as far back as you can remember. It's tremendous, and also we found that, well, I think a really key thing is that we were religious about having reunions every 5 years, and we had good attendance each time. Now somebody said, there's a joke around it. The guy says, the doctor told me to apply this religiously, and he says, twice a year?
Yeah.
But anyway, and we have people like Mark Birchfield, Pat
Yeah.
Robertson, that really took the lead in those early years.
Yeah.
And somebody else picked it up, and just I mean, there are 50. Some of these later ones, Peggy Don Day and Shirley Brown and Susan McCall, and if I start naming names, you leave people out. But there's I mean, it's not like one or two people. It's just there's so many people. Susan McCall has she's kept our email list up all along. Ben has kept us rolling on in terms of prodding us with funny stories. But I think that was really helpful for us to keep in touch at least every 5 years. And then once we started reaching this retirement age, like I said a little earlier, I think I think we started. That's when you start just look over your life, and I think those of us who moved away from Marshfield are just a little more. We're just more emotional about it.
Yeah.
Because
want to stay engaged.
because we don't live here. You know, it's like and so and
I think that's truth.
And so I think those of us who are outside just really want to stay even more connected.
Yeah.
And that's why, it's out of these email things that we started this scholarship program, which was when, George.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. But Ben Dugan and Jim Boone and Stan and Roy and I, we Zoom once a month.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for an hour or so.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
keep
great.
up.
Well, go ahead and talk about that scholarship.
Okay. Well, we were planning the 50th reunion like years ahead of time, and there was a number of people involved in that, like Roy said. And Ben suggested that maybe one of the things we could do was to give a scholarship to a high school senior in Marshfield. And so the idea was thrown out, well, $500. And so there was a small committee that was formed, and I said I'd chair the committee. And so we looked at that and I said, well, we can raise enough for 2 scholarships. Yeah. So we started in 2012, and we started giving 2 scholarships to seniors. And we got to our reunion year, we gave 10 scholarships. Wow. And awesome. Then we decided that, well, a $500 scholarship, that's not much for college these days. Let's make it $1,000. Yeah. So we started giving $2,000 scholarships, and we've given away $26,000, I think, to 34 kids. Yeah. We are in the process of raising funds to make this a permanent scholarship, and I hope that next year is our 60th reunion, and by that time we'll have enough. We've got 14 or so thousand in the bank, and we'll have enough that we can make it a continual presence of the class of '66 in Marshfield High School.
Awesome. Well, you say permanent as far as we're concerned.
Well, yeah, that's
till we're dead.
Basically, yeah.
It's kind of like the last one of us. That's kind of our thought. Is make this thing last until like the last one of us is alive. So you're kind of thinking about somewhere around 2050 at least to get to that point. Yeah. The other thing about it that we really discussed was that we know this is a small amount, and we know that there's scholarships and for the top people in the class. And we were particularly two-thirds of Americans did not have college degrees. Right. And I happen, this is a political point of view, but I happen to think that most people probably shouldn't be going to college. I don't think that's what's required, but extra training, education is needed. And so we really wanted to kind of think more on people who had, I guess not such strong academic as it could be trades, technical, maybe something else. Now we a lot of our students go into nursing, and we consider that to be the type of thing just to get, it's just a little extra, and for them to be recognized. And
the intent is to help a kid that would make a real difference going to college. If you got a whole bunch of scholarships, well, good for you, but we want to find that kid that really maybe he's not going to get anything else.
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to be on the Marshfield Public School Foundation board since 1997. I'm actually the second longest ranking member now, behind Marty Fogelsong. But
well, you guys make this really easy for us.
It's a wonderful organization. It's done. I don't know how many kids we've helped, but all of our endowments now are over $1 million and
That's great.
added together, but it's because of folks like you starting and establishing those scholarships. And when my mom and dad both passed, we established one because, what are you going to do with flowers and, people want to give something, and it's been a great tool for memorials and so forth. We'll continue to see that grow, but I know your class, I believe, is the only class that actually has, at least through our foundation, a scholarship, and I think that's something that all classes should look at because I think it's a great way to carry on and continue to give back to the school or to the students of the school that gave so much to you all. So it's a great thing.
Well, the foundation makes it really simple because we just send you the checks. We don't have to handle anything.
Yeah.
And then Stan Whitehurst cuts a check to the winner.
Yeah.
So.
And you all, in your case, you guys help select the winner, which is great. That helps us because we have plenty we have to look at.
So how does that work in terms of teachers? Some teachers or counselors make some.
The counselors.
Will they give some advice?
No, the system is there's 25 local scholarships.
More than that now, probably close to 40. I would imagine altogether.
The counselors make the list of those available. They have a standard application.
But the criteria is different on different
Yes.
ones.
Right. So I think we got 38 applications this year. So we kind of read through those. There's a basic information. Then there's a little essay about why this person deserves a scholarship, and that we go through those and then try to find out which of those kids we can help the most.
Right. And there's questions on there about need. If are you going to be receiving other scholarships? Well, some of these students, a lot of the Bright Flight students, they're out there, trying to get anything they can, and a lot of them are getting maybe full rides. Mm-hmm. And so, in many cases, some of the scholarships we look at maybe some of those that would not be a Bright Flight, but still have done well and show all the aptitude and answer all the questions right and so forth. So it's a great thing. It really is.
And so it's kind of we've not had any contested elections for the scholarship committee. People battling each other.
You don't see the money, no.
For being on the committee, I'm saying it's been pretty good. It changes a little bit along the way, but people volunteer the time. It's got to be a great thing. I'd love to be here to be a part of it. It's like this, you guys sit down in person and go over. It's just a chance to be together.
The last question, and I know we need to move on, but I wanted to kind of throw this out there for all three of you. Of course, Roy lives in Washington. He's around the climate today, what's going on in our world. Our cultural shifts that are going on today seem to be a lot stronger than we've had for many, many years. And as a minister, as someone that lives in a area of Seattle, an urban area, DC, what do you guys see in the future for this country, and how are we going to be able to bring diplomacy and bring and everybody knows my political affiliation, but I also think that we have to figure out a way to sit down and talk to each other, and we can't turn on the TV, turn on social media, and just blast people all the time, and all sides, any side, doesn't matter. How do we return to those days of our childhood, those days that we remember when we were growing up in this community, when the attorneys would argue against each other during the day and go to the bar at night and have a beer with each other? How do we ever return to that? Is social media changed things so much that it'll never happen?
Oh, well, it certainly changed things. One thing I have to remember is that it was pretty tough. We were pretty divided in the late '60s, early '70s. I mean, it's a different kind of division, but it was tough. I mean, when I think about that, families divided over the war and over the changing things. It seemed like we'd never get through it.
Watergate.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been in Washington since '87. A lot of people say that one of the biggest problems is that somewhere in the late '80s is when the majority of Congress no longer moved their families to D.C. Partly because the people back at home said, we don't want you to go there and become D.C. people. We want you to spend your time here. But because the families are not in D.C., that means the members of Congress never have weekends.
Yeah.
So, and those were when the people from different political parties and different persuasions socialized together.
Yeah.
They knew each other, and most members of Congress now say, we don't really know.
Yeah.
We don't really. I mean, we don't really know each other. We don't have. They never have a chance to experience. So there's something right there that is. It's a system. It's like how do you change that? And so there's a lot of people in Washington who are working on trying to find new ways to get people together, and in ways where they can talk, have a civil conversations. Doing good things. A lot of places that's happening, but it's I'm of the mood that it's like turning the volume and the heat down is a lot. Without, and that doesn't mean stepping back from stating things, but maybe sometimes it is good to be folksy rather than
whatever. Exactly.
But I mean, but that's a big question.
It is
I love
a big
the way
question.
this is 30 seconds. That's what you get sometimes on
okay.
these TV shows. It says, and the 30 seconds we have left.
What's
But
the
we can
meaning of
think
life?
about it. But we can think about it because even local political candidates running for representative or senator, and in their ads they immediately start out, well, I'm going to go up and I'm going to fix the corrupt politicians, the corrupt lobbyists, the corrupt this, and people hear that and they listen to that and they think it's true. Then that becomes perception becomes reality. And Roy, you and I both know that most of the politicians that we know are not corrupt. Now that the system may be corrupt or not be the kind we ought to want to have, but I don't know. It's just I yearn for those days like when we were children in Marshfield, Missouri. And
Well, a big difference was there were 3 networks, and they had pretty much the same news.
Yeah.
People watched kind of the same shows on TV. There was 3 channels, and if you wanted, for example, if I want to tell a story or an illustration or even a joke
Or in
a sermon, what do you tell that has common ground? You say, well, you saw something on Johnny Carson's show.
Yeah.
Well, because most people did watch Johnny Carson or was aware of it. Well, we had one top 40 music, and we all had common experiences of life.
Right.
Now we're so divided. We have these information silos. You can find on the internet somebody that thinks exactly like you do, and will take you down a road of a place you shouldn't go.
Right.
We got to find places where people can, as Roy said, come together.
Yeah.
Socialize, talk. I think one of the things the church does is providing that. We have different political opinions, but we don't really get into that much in church.
I think that's the way it ought to be in church. But you know what? Not all churches think that way.
No,
and that's to me that's a little scary.
I'm very concerned about the
too.
rise of Christian nationalism and what that means for our church. And we try to be very faithful to our own ideas, but without assuming that you have to agree with me.
We should be faithful to the scriptures, in my opinion. But Stan, final thoughts? We got to go here.
Well, I wish I could offer some sage advice on how to get people talking together, but it's looking for the common things that we may still have, whether it's old friends with a shared history or an interest in old cars. I don't know. We just have to find a ground that's common so we can keep in touch with people who may not agree with us in other ways. I don't know how you do that.
But you know what, Stan and Linda are examples of one of the things that's being promoted around the country, which is for people to actually spend more physical time with each other in groups.
Yeah.
They don't. I've stayed in their house. They don't have a large house at all, but they have concerts at their house. These musicians come through, like 1 and 2, 3 people in a group or whatever, and they send out the flyers and people come and
That's awesome.
They set up their
That's
living room
really,
and they've been doing it for years. And so that's the modeling.
Right. That's the Saturday night singings we grew up around.
Shorty Brown used to talk. Her house out there just past Bracken was the house where on Saturday nights they would have what they call music parties.
Sure.
And that just meant somebody brought a fiddle and a guitar.
Exactly.
I think this youngest generation now, everything I read is they're longing for this. They're not longing for something that they miss from the past. They're longing for something they may never have
They don't
experienced.
have.
Somehow or another, they know they need that.
I think you may be right, and I see that in my sons and my grandchildren. They're better kids than we were. They really are. I mean, in that regard. So
That's great.
well, what you guys have done, the class of '66, you're doing exactly, Stan, what you suggest. Old friends, communicating, sticking together, and no matter your political affiliation, putting the differences aside and coming together. So I appreciate y'all coming today. This has been wonderful. We'll do it again.
Nice.
Okay?
Yeah, and just remember that the rest of the members of our class, there's a lot of things that they shouldn't have to be associated with us. You know, we're
True. Well, we'll be glad to have them on to kind of balance the
That's right. So
scales.
you can get get the better part of the class.
Well, thanks again, guys, and hopefully we can see you at Reunion Fest this summer around the 4th. It's another great time, and we just appreciate your friendship and appreciate your
Thank you.
support of
Thank you, Lyndall.
what we do here at the community center. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Stan, thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
You bet. See you soon.
Thank you.
I got to sign off here before we.
Okay.
Let me get this
Don't
turned
move.
off.
Don't
Don't
move.
move.
Let me get this turned off here so
Oh,
we don't.
okay. Well,
Yeah, hang on. My producer left me, so I have.
Oh,
to
I
sign.
Thanks, Roy.
Probably had to go get his
thank you.
girlfriend.
That was fun.
Isn't it fun? I just
Yeah.
appreciate it so much.